that this is the park that also that Biggie Small came to buy a lot of his marijuana. And the night or the day before he got killed, he visited some Southside Compton.
Before and even after Biggie's death, a lot of people wondered if he was really tied to a gang or if it was just street talk. One of the biggest claims from some quarters, he was affiliated with the Southside Crips of Compton.
At this particular park.
He was here, but there was graffiti. There's a little shed over here by the kids' playground. There was graffiti over there that said Biggie, Notorious B.I.G.
Now, these guys aren't just any street gang. They're one of the most feared crews in Compton, with a reputation that reaches far beyond the city.
This area right behind me, this was one of their main hangouts. We used to come here all the time, and we used to arrest people for dope, people with guns, and we'd have drive-by shootings at this park.
Now, with that kind of pull, what do you do when you are an East Coast rapper that wants to deliver your music to the West Coast? Would it not make sense to partner with the guys who can actually get things done for you in the West Coast? Apparently, that's what Bad Boy Records and Biggie did. With the help of Eric Von Zip, the notorious Harlem Kingpin, introductions were made between Diddy and Keef D, and so was born a partnership that led to some of the most iconic events in the 90s rap scene. I mean, you know how that played out, leading to the eventual deaths of both Tupac and Biggie, but that's a story for another day. Back to the point, Biggie's connection to the Crips wasn't just random. His cousin C Gutta was a well-known vicious member.
C Gutta, what up? Nigga, C Gutta, Biggie cousin.
Oh, really?
Junior Mafia, C Gutta. I mean, that's my bro. That was my bro. You know, but he's a Crip.
Okay.
And he's at the time, he was like a notorious Crip.
C Gutta had a solid rep in the streets, and he was tight with Biggie, but Biggie's ties go deeper. Keef D was another notorious Crip whom Biggie supposedly had a connection with. Keef came in picture during the intense East Coast versus West Coast feud, when Bad Boy Records needed protection against death row. He and a guy named Zip were supposedly in the forefront of it all.
So Puffy elected to, let's align ourselves with these street guys, with Zip. And then through Zip came Keefy?
Yeah, Zip and Keefy were the ones that had the relationship.
This alignment wasn't by chance. These South Crips gangsters were once connected to Eazy-E and Ruthless Records in their battle against Death Row. Now, with Bad Boy in the frame, they had more reason to come together and fight a common enemy, Death Row. After Keef got in, Biggie got even deeper in the mix, rolling more with him, hitting their South Side spot and getting close with the people around there, South Park. One of the most infamous places tied to the South Side Crips was South Park, a hotspot for gang activity, full of history and danger.
Well, this park and this whole area is claimed by the gang called Southside Crips. Southside Crips is one of our larger gangs in Compton. This area right behind me, this was one of their main hangouts. We used to come here all the time, and we used to arrest people for dope, people with guns, and we'd have drive-by shootings at this park.
Now, here's the crazy part. Word on the street is that Biggie was seen there just a day before he was offed. But how deep did Biggie's ties with them really go? Let's break it down. Back in '92, the West Coast was shaking things up in a way nobody saw coming. Normally, if you wanted to make it big in the music industry, you had to go through one of the major record labels. But Suge Knight wasn't about to play by those old school rules. Instead, he built his own empire, Death Row Records. And when Dr. Dre and the Doc decided they were done with NWA and Ruthless Records, Death Row became their new home. Later that year, Dre dropped the Chronic. And what a lot of people don't realize is that he actually took shots at Tim Dog on that album. The Chronic went triple platinum, and man, did that make the East Coast salty. Then came Snoop Dogg, who might have snatched the crown from Too Short for having the most disrespectful lyrics of all time. Well, at least back in '93. Meanwhile, over on the East Coast, Bad Boy Records was making moves, with Sean Puffy Combs betting big on the Notorious Big and Craig Mack. Just like that, the East was back in business. And at first, no drama, no bad blood, but let's rewind a bit to June '92. At this point, Tupac was a star, but mostly because of his role in Juice, not so much his music. Biggie had some tracks out, but he wasn't a household name yet. So here's where it gets interesting. Pac is on the set of Poetic Justice when he starts playing a Biggie track, Party and BS. And guess what? Biggie just so happens to be visiting the set at the same time. Now back then, East Coast rappers weren't sure how the West Coast would treat them, but Biggie walks over, tells Tupac that's his song he's bumping, and instead of any tension, Pac just shows him love, saying he's a fan. Next thing you know, Tupac is inviting Biggie and his crew over to his place, cooking up barbecue, and setting up an East versus West rap battle for fun. Biggie even admitted that they clicked right away. Later that year, Biggie invited Tupac to New York, and they even performed together. Everything was all good until November 30th, 1994. By this time, things started shifting. Tupac had a legal case in New York and had to be in court on October 1st, so he flew out there. Word got around that he was in town, and Bad Boys rapper Lil Sean invited him to the studio to lay down a verse. So Pac pulls up, walks into the building, steps into the elevator, then boom. 3 guys are there waiting for him, demanding his jewelry.
Tupac comes back into the story, gets robbed, shot, Quad Studios. You saw Tupac coming in the building, correct?
Yeah.
What was going on?
I'm looking over and I see like a few dudes walking down the block. I see the bandana. He's always wearing that bandana. I'm like, and of course we've been hanging around him a few times. You know what I mean? So I know when I see him. But Nino, crazy, Nino heard the shots before we got downstairs. He was like, "Yo, you heard that shit?" I was like, "Nah, I don't hear nothing, but I know Pac got some bomb weed, my nigga."
A struggle breaks out, shots are fired, and the men take off, leaving Tupac in the lobby, bleeding out, waiting for an ambulance. And here's where it gets real. Biggie and Puffy rush downstairs to check on him, but instead of accepting their concern, Tupac flips them off while being wheeled away.
We went downstairs, that's when the police was taking everybody, grabbing you, pulling you to the side, getting your information, saying Tupac got shot, and that was it from there. We stayed downstairs, gave him all that information, and that's when they welled him out.
He survived, but from that moment on, everything changed. Biggie and Puffy swore up and down they had nothing to do with it, claiming they didn't even know what was going to happen, and they wanted to clear things up. But let's be real. How did those guys know exactly when and where to catch Tupac? Someone from the Bad Boy circle had to have tipped them off. At least that's exactly how Tupac saw it. But before he could really air it all out, he got hit with another case just a few days later and ended up locked up. In this next part, pure Tupac legend. The judge actually gave him the option to postpone the case until he recovered. But Pac, being Pac, showed up to court anyway, still in a wheelchair, looking rough but standing on principle. But what came next was an alleged diss track from Biggie titled The Ugliest. Now that's where things took a wild turn. While sitting in Rikers Island, Tupac did an interview with Kevin Powell and straight up called out Biggie and Puffy, basically blaming them for the setup at Quad Studios. The now famous quote, "I know who got me." In today's world, some might call that snitching, kind of like what people said about Gucci Mane when he pointed the finger at Jeezy after that whole mess. But back then, this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Shortly after all this drama, Suge Knight swoops in, bails Tupac out of jail, and signs him to Death Row Records. And just like that, the East versus West rivalry goes from simmering to full-blown war. Tupac and Death Row weren't just taking shots at Bad Boy, they were going all in every chance they got. Meanwhile, Biggie kept trying to downplay the whole thing, and Puffy even went as far as visiting Tupac at Rikers to personally tell him he had nothing to do with the setup. But let's be real, Tupac wasn't trying to hear it, and neither was the West Coast. The disrespect just kept piling on, and things got worse. That brings us to August 3rd, 1995. Back in the 90s, the Source Awards was the biggest night in hip-hop. Forget the Grammys, which a lot of people thought catered to industry favorites. The Source Awards was for the culture, and Death Row was about to use that stage to send a message. And the wildest part, the show was in New York City, Bad Boy's home turf. Suge Knight walks up to the podium with that signature Death Row confidence and boom, takes a direct shot at Puffy.
Any artist out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, and don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the video, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row.
He basically calls him out for always popping up in Bad Boy music videos and the entire crowd not feeling it. The boos rain down, and just when you think it can't get any worse, Snoop Dogg goes up to accept an award and gets booed too. Tension went through the roof. Puffy tries to cool things down at the end of the show, going on stage and calling for unity, saying the whole East versus West thing needs to stop. But at that point, the fans were all in. this wasn't just industry drama anymore, it was personal. The coasts became straight-up rivals, and if you were smart, you knew exactly what songs not to play in certain cities. Fast forward a year, and Tupac had a plan. He knew Biggie and his wife Faith Evans were going through problems. Things had gotten so bad they had even separated for a bit, so Pac reaches out to Faith, tells her he's a fan, and says he wants her on a track. Now, back then, there was no emailing verses. You actually had to be in the studio together. So they link up, take a picture, and record the song. Allegedly, Tupac offers her $25,000 for the feature. Sounds legit, right? Well, according to Faith, after she did the feature, Tupac refused to pay her. And here's where it gets messy. Faith claims Tupac told her she'd only get her money if she, well, did something else with him in the other room.
You were owed $25,000 for the session, and you said that you went to Pac's hotel room, and he basically asked for oral at that point.
She says she refused. Tupac, on the other hand, had a very different version of events, and he made sure to let the whole world know on Hit 'Em Up. That infamous line, "I effed your wife."
Westside, when we ride, come equipped with game. You claim to be a player, but I f***ed your wife.
One of the most savage bars in rap history, and you know that cut Biggie deep. Rumor has it Biggie confronted Faith about whether it was true or not. And to this day, she insists nothing ever happened.
All started kind of figuring it out. I started figuring it out like right there, like, okay. So, I mean, I played it off and played it cool.
But a lot of fans still don't buy it. Either way, this was just the beginning of an all-out war. Soon after, Death Row's group Thaw Dog Pound drops New York, New York. And they even shoot the video in Times Square. New York's own Mobb Deep fires back with LA, Louisiana. And at first, it's all just music and disses. But what happens next? That's when things take a turn nobody saw coming. By 1996, Tupac was moving reckless. He felt untouchable, or maybe he just stopped caring. He wasn't the type to hide behind security, and he wasn't backing down from anyone. But that attitude would cost him. September 7th, 1996, Las Vegas, Nevada. Tupac flies in for a Mike Tyson fight, but before heading to the event, he hits up a party. That's where he crosses paths with the Southside Crips, a notorious Compton gang with a long-standing beef with Suge Knight's Mob Piru Bloods. Remember, this is the Crips gang that Keef D is associated with. The same one Diddy would reach out to for protection through Zip as the East Coast and West Coast heat erupted.
So Puffy elected to, let's align ourselves with these street guys, with Zip. And then through Zip came Keefy?
Yeah, Zip and Keefy were the ones that had the relationship.
If you know anything about these guys, you know they don't back down from drama. And Tupac was about to find out. So when he feels like one of them disrespected him, he doesn't hesitate. He swings first. Drops Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, one of the most feared names out of Compton, right there in the middle of the casino.
Acne shirt, along with Marion Suge Knight, who's a large man in a brown suit, punching and kicking Orlando Anderson.
Orlando Anderson just got humiliated in front of everybody, and you know he wasn't about to let that slide. Fast forward a bit, and Tupac is having a wild night. He's at the Tyson fight, talking trash, hyped up, just being Tupac. Tyson wins, and Pac leaves the arena with Suge Knight, hopping into Suge's BMW 750. They're cruising down the Las Vegas Strip, and that's when a car pulls up beside them. And just like that, it was over.
We was coming up from Mingo and got to the light. We was gonna go drink and smoke some weed, and he happened to be hanging out the window. He was hanging out the window like he was in a parade.
Tupac?
Yeah, he was.
So what happens next?
And we just came, and I ain't gonna go into the details like that. I gave it to Dre, and Dre was like, no. And Lane's like, dude, pop it, dude.
So Orlando shot across Dre?
He leaned over on the window, we rolled down the window, popped.
Right away, all eyes turned to one person, Biggie. People already suspected bad blood between him and Tupac, so naturally the rumors started flying. The FBI even questioned Biggie and Puffy, but they were eventually ruled out. Still, the streets were buzzing with talk that the Southside Crips might have been involved, yet somehow Biggie's name kept coming up anyway. Then, many years later, Keef D, one of the biggest names in the Southside Crips, gets arrested in connection to Tupac's mother.
And the member of Tupac Shakur reveal more on what police found at his Henderson home during their investigation, including 2 giant bins of photographs and numerous clippings of the murder of Tupac Shakur dating back to 1996.
Keef wasn't just any gang member, he had ties to the music industry too. His family ran a custom car shop and some of their clients, Bad Boy Records. But beyond that, there were deeper connections. Eazy-E, the legendary NWA member, grew up in a neighborhood right next to Southside Crip territory in Kelly Park, Compton Crips hood. Keef's brother Kevin was allegedly close friends with Eazy, so it's not shocking that in 1993, when Eazy shot the video for Real Mutha G's, a Southside Crip ride supposedly made a cameo. That car, Gangster of Love, was either owned by a Southsider named Big Spank or someone from Keef's own family. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The track also featured rapper Biggie Knockout, who was tied to Compton's Nutty Block Crips and was supposedly best friends with Keef's nephew, Orlando Anderson. Yeah, that Orlando Anderson, the guy Keef later claimed was the one who pulled the trigger on Tupac. And if you think this is just a bunch of random connections, check this out. There's a video from 1993 called Blaze It Up by Mello, and it literally features 3 of the 4 guys that Keef would later say were in the white Cadillac the night Tupac was shot.
Roll it up, blaze it up, pass it around. When you start choking, put the shit down.
One of those guys, DeAndre Big Freaky Smith, who was allegedly sitting in the back seat with Orlando when the shots went off. The video even has a clip of Orlando Anderson himself, shooting dice. And later in the same video, there's footage from a house party where you can see Keef D, his close friend Wen Prince, and DeAndre Smith all together. Orlando shows up again too, rocking sunglasses. Now here's the part that's mind-boggling. After Tupac was offed, rumor has it that Death Row Records actually paid Orlando Anderson to testify on Suge Knight's behalf. Why? To help Suge avoid going back to prison for the beatdown of Orlando that happened at the MGM Grand right before the shooting. If that's true, then Orlando got jumped and ended up getting paid by the same people who jumped him.
Orlando testified on Suge's behalf at trial, claiming that Suge wasn't kicking him, and he got paid off a certain amount of money.
$60,000.
$60,000.
So later that year, in an attempt to cool things down, Puff Daddy and Snoop Dogg stood together and gave a speech calling for peace between the East and West Coast. They made it clear that Biggie had nothing to do with Tupac's shooting, at least according to them. But let's be real, just because someone says something doesn't mean it's the truth. And that brings us to March 7th, 1997. Biggie touches down in LA for the 1997 Soul Train Awards. And let's just say the welcome committee is not happy to see him. The crowd lets him have it, booing him non-stop because in their eyes, he's still tied to Tupac's mother. And if that wasn't enough, Pac's All Eyes on Me wins Hip Hop Album of the Year, making the whole night an even bigger slap in the face for Biggie.
And the Soul Train Music Award goes to Me Against the World, Tupac!
But he brushes it off, keeping that cool, unfazed attitude, at least on the outside. So here we are, just 2 days after the Soul Train Awards, March 9th, 1997. The tension is thick and the streets are buzzing, but Biggie, he's just going about his business like it's any other day. Compton police get a call, a tip that Biggie Smalls is hanging out at South Park, right in the heart of Southside Crip territory.
That this is the park that also that Biggie Small came to buy a lot of his marijuana. And the night or the day before he got killed, he visited some Southside Compton at this particular park.
He was here, but there was graffiti. There's a little shed over here by the kids' playground. There was graffiti over there that said Biggie, Notorious B.I.G.
Now, usually this kind of info would have the cops rolling in fast, sirens blaring, but this time, nothing. They don't even bother. And honestly, why would they? This wasn't the first time Biggie was spotted around that crowd. He had connections. People like Keef D were in his circle. So to them, this was just another night. No reason to get involved. They let it slide. But out in the streets, the whispers are getting louder. The word is that Biggie owes somebody money. Who? Why? Nobody really knows. But whatever it was, the debt hadn't been paid. And in this game, debts don't just disappear. Still, Biggie keeps it moving. He's got places to be, and he's not about to let a few rumors slow him down. That night, he heads to a Vibe magazine party. Big event packed with celebrities. The kind of night where the cameras are flashing, the drinks are flowing, and the music is loud enough to make you forget about everything else. He's smiling, laughing, acting like none of this street talk even exists. Then 1 a.m. rolls around. Biggie leaves the party, hops into his SUV, and starts starts cruising down Wilshire Boulevard. It's a quiet night, nothing out of the ordinary. Then a black Chevy Impala suddenly pulls up right next to him, window down, gun out. And before anyone can react, it's over. Just like that, hip-hop loses another icon, another legend taken too soon. And the craziest part? Biggie knew the risks. He was warned. C-Gutta, his cousin, had straight up told him not go to LA. He told him it wasn't safe, to stay back. And even if he had to go, at least wear a bulletproof just in case.
I'm like, yo, bro, because I know this is gangbang capital of the world. You know what I'm saying? I'm knowing it can go down. So I'm telling him, I think I sent him, I spoke to him. Matter of fact, the night I spoke to him, I'm like, yo, go to the spy shop. And cause I had a ad for the spy shop from some magazine I had. But anyway, I had a joint for the spy shop, so I was like, yo, go get a fast boy. You know what I'm saying? Drive-bys. You know what I'm saying? This is I was telling her, I was like, yo, to be on point, I'm not dead.
But Biggie, he wasn't about that life. He wasn't going to hide, wasn't going to move like he was scared. He took his chances. And in the end, it cost him everything.
Yo, somebody in the car pointing a gun at Big and them. I goes to open the door. Fucking next thing, pop, 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 pop. Yeah. 5 or 6 o'clock, it was like, pop, 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 pop. Right?
Two of the biggest names in hip-hop gone in just 6 months. First Tupac, then Biggie. And just like that, the rap world would never be the same again. And with their deaths came the questions, the theories, the suspicions, the secrets people swore they knew but could never prove. Was Tupac set up at Quad Studios by Bad Boy? Did Biggie have a hand in what happened to Tupac in Vegas? And the biggest question of all, was Biggie's death a direct hit for revenge? Maybe we'll never know. Maybe the truth was buried with them.